And welcome back, everybody, for the closing keynote from Dona Sarkar, Chief Creative Officer by Prima Donna Studios, a truly inclusive fashion line, keynote speaker, published author, and CTO of Microsoft Accessibility. And I just want to say, if I remember the tweets and things correctly that I've seen, the dresses from Prima Donna all have pockets, which, as somebody who adores dresses, is super important because there's nothing like having nowhere to put your phone or anything else that you need to carry. Donna, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a cool event. I had to take a pause in watching to go and take a splash into the ocean, which you'll see here behind me. That's why my hair is still wet. So I wanted to share with you an interesting journey I've been on. I'm going to sit down here in a second. So I stopped moving. Now it's all shadowy and weird, but okay, there you go. I want to share with you an interesting journey I've been on for the last 6-7 months. I took over as the Director of Technology for Accessibility at Microsoft in June. And only once I started in this role did I realize how important accessibility is for technology all up. Whether you're a developer, an IT pro, a consumer of technology, a gamer, accessibility is one of those things that we definitely don't talk about enough, and we should talk about more. And I'm going to just share one set of slides here. And I would like to walk you through some of the things I've learned that have been honestly just like truly, truly eye-opening. So let me know if you can see that. I'm just trying to move this here. Can you see a set of slides that say the word?
We can see a set of slides.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So like I was saying before, 6 months ago, I realized that I'm working on a concept, right? A concept, a theory, a practice that will help people make lots of money, make a huge impact, and help lots and lots and lots of people. And people are like, oh, that sounds amazing. How do you do that? And the answer is we design for disability. And when we say design for disability, people don't quite know what that means. They're like, what does that mean? So you design for people who use a screen reader? Like, well, it totally depends on what you're designing for, right? First of all, when you think about disability, we shouldn't think about it as a permanent all the time case. Every one of us has either a disability or a situational limitation at some point or another. So let's talk about hearing, right? If you have a permanent disability, you might be born deaf. Sometimes you have a temporary disability, like you might have an ear infection. And then sometimes there's a situational limitation, like you're in a loud bar with your mates and trying to have a conversation, or you're wearing noise canceling headphones and someone is trying to talk to you about something. Every single one of us has been in a situation where we have had one of these limitations. So if you design for somebody who has a permanent disability, it will also work for someone who has a situational limitation. The reverse is not true. So let's talk about that a little bit more. First, let's get over this concept that the word disability is a bad word. It is not a bad word. All of these images you're seeing on the left side of Naomi Osaka, Elon Musk, Michael Phelps, Richard Branson, Britney Spears, and Simone B., all of them have come out and said, I have a disability. I have a mental health concern. I have dyslexia. I have bipolar. It is not a bad word. It's just a fact. It's like saying, I am a brunette or you have brown skin. It is just a fact and a part of being human. So I'd love for us to just go through some examples. And these examples are all from my own team. This is Ann Taylor, who is my colleague. She is blind. She has a disability. Here in this image, you're seeing her showcase to Satya Nadella, Microsoft CEO, how to use Seeing AI to see the world around her. Next, this is Jessica Rafuse. She uses a wheelchair. She's a disability. She heads up policy for accessibility here at Microsoft. This is Jenny LeFleury. I call her J Fluff. No one else calls her that. She is deaf. She has a disability. She's also our Chief Accessibility Officer. And this is me. I have dyslexia. I have a disability. Hearing me say this over and over, hopefully has gotten across the point that it is absolutely okay to call someone with a disability someone with a disability. What we don't want to do is come up with weird words, okay? This was a real tweet that I saw a few weeks ago that says, oh, I found a new, we don't say the word disability or disabled term, passengers with functional diversity. I think I've seen it all. So don't do that. Don't call it differently abled. Don't call it functional diversity. Don't call it, all these other weird shenanigans terms. Just say the word disability. And the reason we do that is because it's not the 1800s. People with disabilities are everywhere. If you wear a heavy pair of glasses, like with a strong prescription, guess what? You have low vision. That's why you have glasses. If you wear hearing aids, guess what? If you have carpal tunnel and need to wear a wrist brace thingy, guess what? You have a disability. It's okay. So what is disability anyway? I've said this word now 30 times. Disability, according to the World Health Organization, is a mismatch between someone's abilities and the way an environment is set up. It's not some sort of a personal physical limitation. It is a human-made problem, okay? So wheelchairs do not make the building inaccessible, the stairs do. I found that to be a very profound statement when this image on the left was happening. I was at a fashion show for Prima Donna Studios a few months ago, 3 months ago. And before me, there was a fashion company called White House Black Market, and they were showing their spring collection, I think this was. And they had, very big diversity of models, which was really cool. And one of their models is in a wheelchair. She uses a wheelchair. And one of the things they'd done was they built the runway to be wide enough where this model can spin her wheelchair around and to showcase what she's wearing. Now, the hotel where this was taking place did not have a ramp to get the wheelchair up onto the runway. So what made the situation unequal? It was the lack of ramp. It's not the person in the wheelchair that makes the situation unequal. It's the lack of the accommodation. So again, human-made design problem, not anything wrong, quote, with the person. So there are over 1 billion people in the world with disabilities, and I actually think it's more than that. There's, of course, everything that you think of when you think disability or accessibility. There are people who are colorblind, which, if there's any dudes watching, 1 in 12 men are colorblind. You may not even know you're colorblind. Many people find out like late in life. People who are low vision, so they may use like magnifier, like have a very strong prescription on their glasses, and then people who are blind. Hearing, so people who are deaf, but also people who are hard of hearing, people who are losing their hearing in one ear or the other. I've been meeting a lot of hard of hearing people lately. So they wear hearing aids, or they have those trendy new AirPod looking hearing aid things. There's a bunch of startups now catering toward buying like over-the-counter hearing aids that you can just order, like glasses from Warby Parker type thing. I'm going to skip cognitive for now and go on to speech. Speech are people who may not speak at all. They speak using technology, or it might be someone who has a speech impediment. So speech impediment meaning what we call a stutter. The president of the United States, Joe Biden, has a stutter. He's very open about it and talks a lot about how he's worked to overcome his fear of public speaking. Then there's mobility. So this is something like you may use a wheelchair because you have cerebral palsy, you may have had a spinal injury, or you have arthritis like me in my knees. So I have to hang on to rails when I climb up and down stairs. The two areas I'd like to really focus on are cognitive and neural. So cognitive is what we call neurodiversity. Cognitive and neural are interesting because they're invisible disabilities, right? We don't see them. When we look at a person, we can't quite tell. A lot of people in tech actually fall into cognitive disability, and often they don't even know it. This is people who may have ADHD, people who may have autism, or people who have dyslexia. For example, I didn't know about dyslexia until I was 32 years old. And so many people who are in my age group are not realizing that they have a cognitive disability unless they have kids. So many times people's kids get diagnosed, and the neurologist will often say, hey, this stuff is highly inherited. It tends to inherit from parent to child. So let's bring your parent in and see if you've inherited from one of them. And lo and behold, many of my colleagues turn out to have ADHD, dyslexia, autism, because they find out in their kids' diagnosis. The other one is neural, which are mental health. This affects a lot of people just in the world, in the tech industry also. People who have depression, whether it's seasonal or permanent, people who maybe have bipolar 1, bipolar 2, people who may have anxiety, generalized anxiety, situational anxiety, nighttime anxiety, social anxiety. These are all things. Agoraphobia, of course, PTSD and OCD. These are all neural disabilities or mental health concerns. So when you look at the range and you think about yourself and whether there's someone in your life or you who may have one of these things, you'll realize that 1 in 2 people are impacted by disability, neurodiversity, or mental health, because you or someone you love are definitely part of, the crew of people who have a disability of some sort. So once you realize like, oh, actually the addressable market of accessibility is humongous, then this problem starts to become very, very real and much more important in technology. So I'd like to share my dyslexia situation. Here on the screen, you're seeing a picture of me looking at a bunch of words. And the bunch of words says, my world looks like this. But the top line is how actually my world looks when I look at words on a slide. You'll notice that as I go through the slide deck, I'm describing what you're seeing. This is for people who may have low vision, may be blind, may not be looking at the screen, may just be listening while they're doing other stuff. I don't put a lot of words on slides. And the reason is because I cannot read them. So I have to know what the slides say. And that's why I have a lot of images more than words. My friend and colleague, Dave Dame, who is the director of hardware at Surface, he says it best. He says, we're all going to be disabled someday. Just some of us beat you to it. And I thought that was a really cool quote because there are over $1 trillion of economic power in the hands of people with disabilities. When you look at the sheer number of people who either have a disability or support someone who does, that makes sense actually. And we are a very brand loyal, technical, and connected community. Like if I like a product for dyslexia, I will tell everybody I know. I'm like, go try this reader thing, go try this font, go try this, this hack. Go do it because it really works. And all of my dyslexic friends will go and try it. Here in this image to the left, you're seeing a screenshot of my colleague, Kelly Ford and I. He is blind, he uses a screen reader, and he has built a power app, like a Microsoft low-code power app, using a screen reader. And he's walking me through how we built the app and what the app does. He really loves this product. He thinks it's very cool. So he's gone and done a demo for our Microsoft Ignite conference, which is our big IT Pro conference, on how anyone can build a power app using a screen reader. So companies, businesses who focus on people with disabilities actually do incredibly well. This is not some like waste of money activity. You'll see that in this chart on the right, companies that invest in accessibility, I'm going to move this big pink mouse out of the way. Companies that invest in accessibility have higher net income, that's nearly double. Their employee retention is nearly 90%, and they have like 80+% more profit. I didn't actually believe this until I started doing some research. When Microsoft came out with the adaptive controller, which is a controller that is much simpler to hold and use and has programmable inputs, we got a ton of really, really good press. The adaptive kit reminds us why we're in technology. It makes adaptive controller gives people with disabilities a chance to, play games that they'd missed out on in the past. And the Surface Adaptive Kit recently as well, which is the set of stickers that people can put on their Surface devices to open them easier, find keys easier. When all this media came out, the sales of our bigger products like Azure, they go up because people just like doing business with a company that focuses on inclusivity. It's just a human thing. And that's why I really like Xbox's motto, which is when everybody plays, we all win. I think it's one of the most powerful mottos out there of any product. And I am not a gamer. Okay, I've never played anything, I don't think, except Oregon Trail ones. But it is such a powerful message of when you are inclusive by design, it actually benefits everybody. So it's not just Microsoft, of course. Lots of companies are focusing on inclusivity. You'll see Apple Watch over here on the left. Tom Warren says, love seeing tech companies focus on accessibility. This is why I got into technology in the first place. This was for the Apple Watch gestures, where you can gesture like this or like this to like navigate your watch. I don't know how to do this because I don't actually have an Apple Watch, but I've seen people do it. And then Aaron Huggins over here is saying, this is a good example of accessibility being good for everyone. Like, I don't have accessibility needs, but this is a feature that I would use. And this history of building for people with disabilities that benefits everyone actually goes back quite a long ways. The first audiobooks were invented for blind Americans in 1930s. And now it's a better experience for everyone. Just this morning, I was listening to Gary Vaynerchuk's new audiobook while I was at the gym called 12 and a half. And I was thinking, like, what a cool technology. It lets me like consume books. I love consuming books, but reading is very hard. But I'm able to do that while, getting on a treadmill. So lots of other examples. Typewriters were invented by, the first typewriter is invented by Pellegrino Turri. He is a guy in Italy who was having an affair with a countess. And the countess used to write him beautiful love letters. And she started to go blind. And Pellegrino's like, no, I really like these love letters. So he invents her a typewriter where she can just press the keys to get the letters. And that's how typewriters were invented. Second one, SMS, now, actively what we know as text messaging, were invented by Matti Makkonen and his two sons to communicate between them because they were all deaf. That is how this father and sons communicated. The third one, of course, the internet. Vint Cerf was a researcher for IBM Labs in the 70s. He is hard of hearing. He was hard of hearing. He is still hard of hearing. He invented the internet protocol so he could share his research with his colleagues. All of his other colleagues used to pick up the phone and call each other, but because he couldn't do that, he invented the internet protocol. They were all designed either with or by people with disabilities, but now we can't live without them. So keep in mind that whatever you build or whatever you make, or whether it's a product, a service, an offering, your customers have very different lived experiences than you do. Whether it is a person with disability or a person from another side of the world, a different age group, different gender, whatever, they have different lived experiences. I found this out across all my industries, both at Microsoft and running Prima Donna Studios, my fashion line. Do not ever create for your customers. Instead, you should co-create with them, okay? Because they understand their requirements much better than you do. So how do we do that? I've co-created now across 4 industries, and I'm going to share with you my own personal technique for doing this. So I'll talk a little bit about my fashion line. For Microsoft, we kind of co-create the way you think, where we bring in users to a usability lab, we observe them trying to solve a problem, and then we collect requirements, and then we create tech solutions. So kind of like standard tech usability study stuff, we've just made it standard for every product. For my fashion line, Prima Donna Studios, I decided to do something similar, where I launched the company in 2019, my business partners and I. And from the beginning, we wanted to be a very different kind of fashion company. We now have thousands of powerful tech and business people as our customers. And our entire model is based on creating things for customers that they want. Like, what is missing in your life? Dresses and pockets, for example. Put pockets and dresses, for example. Put pockets and dresses. Things that you can wear on stage that look great in a keynote, but also translate very well to, going out to happy hour brunch with your friends. So in co-creating with customers, and I spend more time talking to customers than I do anything else, we've been able to satisfy these thousands of customers across 13 countries, which has been very cool. So a few customers heard that I do these custom pieces, right? So I'll hear about their use case, like I am going to this thing, or I'm starting a new job, or I want some pieces that are like this. I had a customer who has autism reach out to me. It says, Donna, most fabrics are they're very annoying for my skin. Because I'm autistic, I'm highly sensitive, especially in my upper arms. Is there any way you can build something for me that won't trigger my skin? And I said, yes, I would love to do that. So I worked with her actually to find this silk fabric here. It's like an incredibly light fabric. It does not scratch even a little bit. It does not irritate even after many, many washes in any weather condition. And she liked this fabric so much that I said, why don't we just offer that to everybody? Because who wants itchy fabric? So of course I made something for myself in the same fabric, and I'm like, oh, this is really nice. Right now I'm working with another customer. She has a leg amputation. She's lost one of her legs. So she's like, I would love to find a pair of pants that I can wear. What do you think we can do something? I'm like, absolutely. So we're making a one-legged pair of pants for her. So lots of fashion lines exist, lots and lots of them in the world. Probably 1 million, maybe 10 million fashion lines. But we strive to be the most inclusive fashion line in the world. And when people ask us, why are you doing that? I say, why would we not do that? The question is, why is everyone else not doing it? So as I work at Microsoft and as I run my fashion line, there are 5 questions that I ask myself daily when I go about my business. 1, what am I building and who am I building it with, right? And the key here is to bring people in at the design phase. On the right here is a picture of a woman who has one hand opening a Surface laptop. You'll see that she's got the Surface Adaptive Kit sticker kind of glued to the top of her laptop, and she's using her arm to hold down the laptop as she opens it. This allows her to open this laptop without using 2 hands. So the way the Surface Adaptive Kit was designed was they had a bunch of users of their own customers with disabilities bring their devices, their Surface devices, into a lab. And the team watched these users use the devices to just do their normal work. And they realized so many of the people with disabilities had actually made modifications to the devices. Some had like drilled a hole up here at the top and strung a string through to open it better. Some had like done glue dots. Some had, put like nail polish on keys. I actually was the one that had blue nail polish on the print screen key because I can't read it and I need it all the time. So Surface team said, wow, these folks are all doing these modifications they need to use our products better. Why don't we just make a modification kit? So that's how the Surface Adaptive Kit was born. It's really, really important to not ask your customers for the solution, but to really be in the business of collecting requirements. And the way to collect requirements, I found the best way is to have one-on-one conversations or observe. So think requirements, not solutions. Second, think about who can experience your product right, whatever that product may be. It can be, a non-itchy textile. It can be a piece of software. It can be a product offering. Who can experience it? And just go through the set of people. Can people who are blind, how do they experience it? People who are deaf, how do they experience it? People with limited mobility, people who may have ADHD and are overwhelmed by all of this text, people who may have dyslexia, people who may have social anxiety. How do they experience your offering? I tried to overfunction in this space and make as many accommodations obvious and don't hide accommodations, right? A lot of people have accommodations, but they only offer them when people ask. I'm like, people don't know to ask if you hide your accommodations. So I always put alt text on all my images on my website. When I send out an email, I always alt text because I never know who's a screen reader user.
Sort of the critical feedback.
My husband is yelling. I'm going to move over here.
Discuss that.
He's on a call too. Okay, so I always put alt text on images. I put captions on videos. If you're seeing my screen right now, you'll see captions at the bottom. So every time I give a PowerPoint presentation, there are captions. I try to provide transcripts of every single meeting that I have and recordings. These things just tend to help people who could not be there, may not have heard everything properly, etc. And if you are an Office user, run accessibility checker. You'll see it at the very bottom of Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Just click. It'll say accessibility investigate or accessibility good to go. Just click and you'll get a pane like what you see here on the left side. That'll tell you whatever accessibility issues you may have, or it might be accessibility budget. So once you know who you're including, think about who are you unintentionally excluding, okay? So say you're going through and realizing, oh, I don't know how deaf people are going to experience this. Figure out how best deaf people do experience a product or service like yours. My whole thing is do no harm. In this image, you're seeing my colleagues Rick and Caruana present something at Microsoft Ignite. And, they're telling jokes and they're doing all this. Someone who's deaf may not be able to hear what they're saying, but because of the sign interpreter on the right side, they're able to understand what is being said. So they're also able to participate. You don't have to find a way for everyone to participate the same way, but make sure everyone has a way to participate. So this is back to that point of be a hero, make your accessibility accommodations available to everyone, because you often don't know who needs the accommodation in the first place. And many times people don't even know they need the accommodations. Ever since I started turning on captions, so many people reached out to me and said, that is really cool. Thank you for doing that. I'm not deaf, but I speak another language, or I can't understand your accent that well, or it's just nice for me to see the words while you're saying them. Do not hide your accessibility settings. So many people hide them. And then 5, what is your experiment, feedback, iterate? How are you co-creating with your customers? How are you learning your customers' requirements, making changes, testing with them, taking the feedback back, and making more changes? So make sure you've got a really good loop as to how you listen to your customers and close the loop with them to tell them what you do. So I'll give you one example of inclusive design that it takes place in Microsoft Teams, which is what I'm using to present this. In Microsoft Teams, if you are somebody who is dyslexic, you can use Immersive Reader to read the chat out loud to you. If you are deaf or have ADHD and you're distracted by a background with lots of stuff going on, I blur my background to let people focus better. I do the same thing for captions and transcriptions for everyone, someone who might be deaf, someone who might speak another language. I make the video recordings available for people who may need to consume the information later, but also someone who is absent. And then the hands up emoji in the chat is really good for people who may not feel as comfortable speaking up in meetings, but they feel much more comfortable typing or sharing some sort of an emotion about the meeting. So that is what I've learned recently. Going forward, I'm asking myself 2 questions, and I'd love everybody's help. 1, how can we make more accessible developer tools or citizen dev tools, right? How can we make more accessible code editors, more accessible cloud storage things? Like for Microsoft, I think about Visual Studio, Azure, and Power Platform. How can we make these products more accessible so more people with disabilities can go and get developer jobs? These are some of the highest paying jobs in the world, and we really want more people with disabilities to have them, because then we can have more people with disabilities becoming developers and citizen devs, which leads to better products. So it's a circular thing that the more people with disabilities you have joining your engineering teams, the better your products are going to be for everyone, but also people with disabilities. So I would love to hear any ideas you have around these things, and that is the homework that I'm assigning you today. Thank you so much for being a part of the Tech Accessibility Summit. Here are a bunch of resources. I know Rory's already given a presentation on some of these topics, but there are a ton of resources around how to make accessible websites and Android apps by using Accessibility Insights, Visual Studio Toolbox, to do a deep dive into accessibility in Visual Studio, embedding Immersive Reader into apps, looking at how to build immersive power apps or accessible power apps, and how do you do Rory's programming for accessibility down at the very bottom. Thank you so much for being with us today. It is such a joy to talk to all of you accessibility ninjas, and please do reach out and let me know how we can create a more accessible community for devs. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. That was amazing. What a way to finish the day off. We've got a couple of questions that we're going to ask. We're a little bit out of time, so we're going to limit it to 2 questions today.
Just going to turn this. 1 sec. Keep
No
talking.
problem.
I'm just trying to stop sharing my screen.
The first question is one that came to me at the start of your talk. I love the fact that you talked about your disability with dyslexia. And it's something that I try to do with my mental health issues with some interesting results. And I was wondering, how do you experience people's ideas of taboos when you do talk about your disability with dyslexia?
How do I deal with the taboo factor?
Yeah. How do you deal with the taboo factor, and how do people react when you do it?
I think the best way to normalize a taboo is to talk about it a lot. So I talk about it a lot. I will bring it up in random conversations. I'll be like, hey, just being dyslexic, it would be great if someone could read that out loud to me. Or maybe we can make it bigger, or maybe we can share it out earlier so I can consume it on my own in my own time. Because I realize leaders have a responsibility to talk about their disabilities. Because if we talk about it, then we make it okay for others. And specifically around mental health, I bring it up probably every single day. I talk about, hey, we want to make sure to preserve mental health of our teams. So let's not have this meeting Friday after 12 o'clock p.m. Or let's not have this meeting Monday before noon, because we don't want our team working on the weekend. That's not good for their mental health. And I bring up the words over and over and over again. The second thing I do is I'm very, very clear when I'm taking a mental health day. I say, hey, it's been a long week. I'm taking a mental health day this Friday. Any of you should feel free to do that anytime you want to. But I'm very, very clear. I don't say, oh, I'm sick today or I'm busy. I say, I am taking a mental health day. And I want to normalize it. The best thing leaders can do is just talk about it a lot and role model the behavior. I recently read a study that said 92% of employees wish their leaders would talk about mental health more, but only about 50% of employers do. So there's a huge opportunity there for employers to better serve their employees by openly talking about disability and mental health. Do it a lot.
Thank you. And Rita, you have a question?
Yeah, so Cto of Accessibility, that's a job title we don't hear very often. And I'm actually not very much aware of many leadership roles that have accessibility in the title. Do you see this changing in the near future?
Absolutely. Actually, this year is the most accessibility leadership positions I've ever seen. Right now, everybody is hiring a director of accessibility tech or a director of tech accessibility for their company. Just like if you go on LinkedIn and search for accessibility, you'll see so many jobs, and they're all in this digital accessibility space. Walmart, Atlassian, Netflix, of course, Google, Apple, all of them. But you'll see the most interesting companies start to hire accessibility directors, because everyone is realizing talking about disability and mental health is vital. Like, it's no longer an option. It's like how 10 years ago, no one had any data scientists, and now we wouldn't even run a company without a data science team. So accessibility is becoming like that, which makes me really happy. It's why I moved into the space, because I don't come from an accessibility background. I've never worked in this space before. And 6 months ago, I realized, oh, wow, this is the next big thing in tech that we should all be focusing on. And I wanted to be a part of the conversation. So that's why I changed jobs.
Thank you. Now, I know that we have more questions in the chat. I don't know how much time you have today, but if you would be able to jump into the chat and answer some of those questions, we would really appreciate it. And, well, we just want to thank you for such an excellent closing keynote to today, and thank you for your time.